Welcome into the first episode of That Betting Podcast with Predictology. My name is Kris. I am joined by my co-host. This is John from Predictology. How are you today, John?
Oh, I'm fantastic, Kris. I'm really looking forward to doing our first show together.
Yeah, it should be fun. We've done a podcast in the past and we had a great time doing it. We figured, you know what? Let's just give this betting thing a try. So we're going to try to do That Betting Podcast, which will be just kind of a look at the weekend or maybe even the midweek games potentially sometimes. But we'll be mainly focusing on the weekend games. We'll try to record these on Thursday, so they'll be out on Friday so that you guys can have a listen before the games actually come out. And if you aren't familiar with Predictology, we have a lot of match analysis and AI algorithms and different cool stuff that you know a lot more about than I do. So I'll let you kind of explain that part. What makes Predictology kind of unique in the soccer betting space?
Yeah, I think with Predictology, we're trying to make the football data and betting data very accessible to everybody. We've got a whole host of tools across the platform that allow you to analyze and develop your own systems. You can literally analyze 350,000 matches in a matter of seconds. We've got AI algorithms that will assess and analyze the weekend's fixtures, potentially identifying where the value might be in any given match or betting market. And we've got loads of other tools to help anyone interested in football and betting to improve their game.
It's really, really a cool thing that you guys have done, and we've been able to kind of put together all of this data and kind of aggregate it all into one place, so you can go check out odds on the Bulgarian league and the MLS and horse racing and all this different kind of stuff that we do over Predictology. So that's going to be kind of the main focus. We're going to look over the summer. We're going to kind of take a focus onto the MLS because that is where my expertise is. That's why I'm here. We're going to take a look at the MLS, and then once we get into the European season, we'll be taking a look at the Premier League and then wherever else we end up going from there. So we'll be mainly focused on kind of the American English side of things, which I think is where most people's kind of general focus is, but there are literally millions of different matches that are on the site, so you can find whatever you are looking for. So that's just kind of a general overview of what we are going to try to do here on the pod. What would you say your kind of goal with this pod is?
Yeah, I think obviously we got to know each other through Sorare, and there's a lot of great content being produced in that community. Someone who's been a professional bettor and trader for more than 10 years now, I find it quite hard to find similar quality of interesting content and good analysis and just general conversations around the betting market. So our hope is sort of combining our knowledge and experience with the tools that we've got at Predictology and to create something a little bit different for those who are interested to take a look at the weekend's games or the midweek games for around the football world.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll look to have something for if you're just kind of getting into the soccer betting side, or if you've been here for a while, we'll look to break down some games for you and hopefully can provide a little bit of value for everybody. So that's going to be the general overview. Let's just go ahead and hop in and check out some games and see what we got here. First game up on the docket is a team that I've been hyping up all winter long, Cincinnati. They're hosting Orlando City. It's an interesting one. Kind of some even odds here, 2.26 on Cincinnati, 2.91 on the away side, Orlando City. What do you think? What are we thinking about this one, John?
Yeah, I think the first stat that popped out to me on this one is that Cincinnati have actually never kept a clean sheet against Orlando. So it's but looking through the AI analysis. Sorry, let me step back a second. So yeah, Cincy have never kept a clean sheet, and it's actually been 4 games since either of them kept a clean sheet in their most recent form as well. So I'm not sure which one of those is a record is going to come to an end, but I had a little look at the value on it. It looks like a low scoring game to me, and potentially Orlando to edge it.
That's an interesting bet. I know, obviously, looking at the past 3 years with Cincinnati can be a little bit misleading because they were so bad, and now you kind of get this team that's a little bit more defensively sound, as you would say. Big question mark here going into this game, I think, is Alacon. And if he ends up playing, I think you're right. I think this is a little bit more of a low scoring game. Salentano ends up playing, you never know. This could get, he's always liable to make a mistake. He's a young kid. He's still learning. He's still growing. A great prospect, but he's not obviously there yet. And then from the Orlando side, it's just kind of how do they handle all these different things going on. They have the game midweek next week against Nashville in the U.S. Open Cup. Is this a spot where they rotate a little bit? You don't know. Coming off the international break, you wouldn't think they need to rotate before a midweek game, but I think this one you definitely want to see lineups as well, because that could swing one way or the other based on who's in, who's out. Whenever you get a little bit closer to game time. But yeah, you're right. I think I do see a little bit more of a low scoring game here as well.
They're both coming off. So I was going to say they're both coming off pretty positive results last weekend. I think Cincinnati would be very happy to come away with a draw at Philadelphia, whereas Orlando got their first win in 4, beating Houston at home. So yeah, I think it'd be an interesting game, tight one, potentially. If the value in the prices at the moment is definitely Orlando, but I wouldn't be extremely confident on that bet. But I certainly think maybe just to edge it, a 1-0 or a 1-1 type of game, I think we could be looking at.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the odds are fairly close, but I think this is more of a coin flip than 2-2-6 versus 2-9-1 would indicate. I mean, if the odds were flipped and Cincinnati was 2-9-1 and Orlando was 2-2-6, I'd probably be taking Cincinnati, but Orlando just have that extra little something. They have Facundo Torres. They just have more weapons for me.
Yeah.
It's be interesting to see Cincinnati too at home with a nice home field advantage. Let's talk Seattle coming off a draw against LAFC. Maybe disappointing. If you really watch the game, they were kind of the better team. The goal that LAFC scored was fantastic, but not one that was coming. It was kind of against the run of play a little bit. They run into a Sporting Kansas City side who is having one of their worst seasons in MLS history, but they are rolling into the Open Cup semifinals. So which kind of Sporting Kansas City do we see against Seattle here? And where are we looking for this one?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting game for the weekend, and one I'm definitely going to try and watch live as well. I think in years gone by, I think this probably would have been a headliner game. With certainly KC are definitely having their troubles this year. One interesting stat that I came across was that KC have actually won 4 of the last 5 against Seattle. Considering how well Seattle done the last couple of seasons, that's quite a standout figure. That said, Seattle's, I think you're right. They would have been disappointed with the draw in their previous game. And it certainly looks like their focus is definitely back onto the MLS. They had a slow start with their attention on their successful campaign in the Champions League. And with KC at the moment, it's no surprise to see that they've only won 11% of their away games and kept a clean sheet in those. So whereas Seattle's focus is definitely back on the MLS, they've had 3 good wins and a credible draw against LA. To be honest, looking at our supremacy, so it's sort of a way of sort of estimating the goals strength between the between the two teams. Has Seattle as a +2, it's a very strong favourites against KC, and I think you'd have to be taking Seattle at around 1.7 would be the clear bet for me on this one.
Yeah, odds on this game 1.71 on Seattle, 4.56 on Sporting. Yeah, I think you're 100% right. Seattle was white hot even before the draw. They'd won 6 out of their last 7 before that. And that's basically dating exactly back to what you said, the CONCACAF Champions League. This team wants to be the greatest team that the MLS has ever seen. And the only way to do that is to win the double. And they're out of the Open Cup. They have nothing else to focus on there. One quick note, lineup-wise, I believe Obed Vargas will be leaving for the U.S. U20 games in El Salvador. I don't know if he'll play this game or not, but he definitely won't be playing the next one. So they will be down a midfielder, and they're obviously already down Paulo. So it'll be interesting to see who kind of fills in that spot for Seattle. But they're just loaded. It doesn't matter. They're loaded. Yeah. They have way more talent than Sporting. And obviously, you want to talk about injuries, Polito and Gadi Quinta are huge misses for Sporting Kansas City this year. And it really shows. And I think that line, 1.71, is not showing enough respect to how dominant Seattle's been. It's showing, I think, what you were talking about, that Sporting has won 4 of the last 5 in this matchup.
No, definitely. And I think, if you switch Seattle for New York right now into that fixture, I think you'd see those odds much lower. And I would put Seattle as very close to New York, if not on par. And correct me if I'm right, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't New York hit Kansas for about 7 a few weeks back as well?
It's true.
So with the forward line that Seattle have, even with Polito out, I mean, they're incredibly strong up front. I think Rusnak could be a potential game changer in this one. He had a great game last weekend. So, I can't see past Seattle on this one.
I did say Sporting is into the semifinal of the Open Cup, but they have only played one MLS team in that run of 3 games. They've played a couple lower division teams, so got a little bit of a lucky draw. They actually play against Sacramento in the next round too, so they still won't play an MLS team in the semifinal. Next one is, for those who don't know me, I'm a big DC guy. I used to work for the team. So I am a huge DC United fan, so I will try not to be biased, but the bias is going to show through sometimes in both positive and negative ways. And right now I'm very frustrated with this team. So we'll see exactly how this shapes up. But DC is at home 2.26 against Nashville, who is 3.01. So fairly even split, slight lean to the home team there. What kind of stats do you have on this game, John?
Yeah, I think so. For those that listen, Kris also has his own podcast, which is Sorare in the States, and I do a little segment on there, effectively a week out from these games, and I think he almost fell off his chair when I actually tipped DC United up for this one. They're not in great form. They are definitely frustrating at the moment. The league average improvement is about 40% for teams playing at home, whereas DC's improvement at home is 18%. So even that, as a positive, is actually not in line with the league average. All that said, I do have a feeling for DC United this weekend. Nashville have one of the more solid away records in the league, although that is heavily influenced by their start to the season. I think I flagged that as being 3 of the last 4 they've lost. Is that right? I can't remember where I put that now. So of their away wins. They haven't won away from home, Nashville, in the last 4. So I think DC may, particularly if they can get Taxi firing again, could cause a result here.
Yeah, Taxi had a poor game last week. I work for a soccer team, so we have home games, and I can't always watch DC games. But last week I was able to watch. Taxi, was not good. There was a few moments where he looked semi-dangerous, but the rest of the time, Chicos really shut him down for Chicago. That being said, you're right. Nashville is not on a good run of form. This is a team preseason that we had pegged as one of the better teams in the league. And you just wonder if maybe that 9-game road trip before they opened their home stadium, Geodis Park, you wonder if that maybe took a toll on them. They moved to the Western Conference as well, which means those road trips are not, just up and down the East Coast. They're all over the place, which if you're not familiar with America, travel is a big, big deal here. So, Nashville not having the season that we had maybe hoped. And I think, a lot of that kind of comes down to Hani Mukhtar, right? Like Hani was just brilliant last year, was what, second or third in the MVP race, and just hasn't been quite the same player. Was last year just kind of a one-season wonder for him? And if so, what does Nashville do going forward? Ake Loba has not worked out. CJ Sapong is productive, but just kind of average as a forward. Renda Leal's been hurt the entire year. So where do they get production from? Leal, I think, is potentially coming back soon. At least I saw he was training, so I don't know if he plays in this game or not. But where does Nashville get goals from? Is my question. So You're right. This isn't probably a blowout game. I kind of feel a draw here. But you never know, I guess. The other thing, Nashville does have Open Cup as well coming up in this rotation against Orlando City. So did they potentially rotate Walker Zimmerman? Didn't play last week. Was that rest because he was with the U.S. national team, or was that some sort of an injury? That's a big storyline because he kind of gets the whole defense organized, and they're a different team when he plays. So just a few kind of storylines to watch. What do you think about those storylines?
Yeah, look, I think you're absolutely right that they're not firing as we know that they can going forward. But they're also a team that I've always felt were pretty solid at the back. And I think your point about Zimmerman's very pertinent. And what do you think about Joe Willis at the moment? Are there any questions about him potentially losing the spot? He's, I think, ever lead to goal maybe 2 or 3 times in the last 5 or 6 games. Like, he seems to be doing everything he can to lose the jersey at the moment.
And they're clearly not happy with him. Like, they benched him 1 game already. Just as kind of almost a warning, I think. It was like a shot across the bow, like, hey, you're not unbenchable, which is kind of weird because he played like every minute for them before. But yeah, Joe Willis has been shocking. Walker's been in and out with USA duty. And I mean, they are missing the kid that went to Montreal, Alistair Johnston. You can tell they're missing him too a little bit because he created a little bit of a spark going forward from fullback. So yeah, I mean, even last year,
like, next in line for Joe Willis. Sorry,
I'd have to look. I don't even know. Yeah. Who was the guy that they started in that other game? But yeah, I don't think they have another, like, they don't have a Stephen Cleveland. They don't have a Tyler Miller. They don't have a backup where you're like, that guy can be a starter somewhere else. So if they do decide Joe Willis is not the answer, it's probably going to be a transfer window where they just bring in somebody else. But yeah, and
the transfer window that opens in July, is that right?
July 7th.
About a week's time.
July 7th.
2 weeks.
Yeah. So that's when all the new players can begin playing. So Insigne, all these guys that are coming over, they can start after July 7th. Chiellini as well is coming over.
Interesting.
So yeah, that's Nashville. Definitely an interesting one to watch. I kind of feel draw. You think there's some value on DC. I think low scoring game though, for sure.
Yeah, definitely low scoring. The draw is the most likely outcome, but I think in terms of just taking the value in the market, it would be edging towards DC. That's purely on the math side of it.
I will say last week, DC looked like the DC under Ben Olsen. They weren't really pressing. They weren't really running. They were just like hunkered down, trying to draw 0-0 from the beginning. And it was so frustrating under Ben Olsen. And if this is the plan moving forward, DC is in some major trouble. But yeah, against Nashville, it might even work. I mean, I could definitely see 0-0 in this game, maybe 1-1, but it'll be an interesting one. Next game, Montreal Impact hosting New Boys Charlotte. The odds on this one, Montreal 1.88. Charlotte is sitting at 3.83.
Yes, another interesting one, and another one that I highlighted last weekend as a potential value player being Montreal. And the interesting thing is the odds have got even more attractive. So I think I lost my notes now. There we are. Montreal, yeah. So yeah, when I was talking last weekend, they looked pretty interesting at around about 1.7, and they've actually drifted out to 1.88, which I think is a fantastic price when you're considering they're welcome a Charlotte team that hasn't won an away game all season.
2 points,
as we expected. 2 points all season. There you go.
Yeah.
So they're winning 75% of their games at home in their wonderful stadium, but on the road they haven't clicked at all. And Montreal are a team that's packed with goals. And I think this at those prices, it's very surprising to get near to even money on against a team that has only got 2 points all season away from home.
Yeah, and I think that even Charlotte, we're talking about a team that's horrible on the road, but is pretty good at home. And you talked about how bad Montreal is on the road. Montreal beat Charlotte on the road, so 2-0 in the reverse fixture. So, yeah, I don't know. I think this one just. Sometimes these games just stick out to me like this is just too easy. Like something's wrong here. Like I'm missing something because there's not nearly enough respect for Montreal in these odds. Like, I don't know. Am I crazy here? Like this, I'm surprised this is 1.88 for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely too big based on the stats and the form. Law of averages, Charlotte have got to put a performance in away from home at some point, and Montreal are not the strongest of the teams in the MLS, but at those prices, I think you got to snap it up. Our only query was, do we know if there's any injury news that we perhaps not picked up on? Is Mihailovic going to be playing?
I doubt Mihailovic plays, which is definitely a blow. But I mean, Montreal played Canadian Championship in the midweek, so maybe they're tired. Is the reasoning? I don't know.
Possibly. Yeah,
they did lose to a 10-man Austin last week.
Well, I don't think they played too well either, did they? But look, purely on the odds, I think it has to be the play is back in Montreal. What you may want to do is split your stake across goals. Goals are highly likely in this game. You know, both teams are pretty prolific scoring and conceding. I think Montreal's games averaging where are we? Yeah, 3.5 goals a game. Charlotte's averaging 2.4 goals away from home. So, I think you may want to have a little coverage on over 2.5 goals, but I can't see past the Montreal win for this one at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, Montreal has lost 3 of their last 4, I should say. Their only win is at home against Cincinnati, 4-3. But there have been goals in all those games. Montreal's only been shut out in that last game against Austin. Okay, let's move to Toronto against Atlanta here. This is one where the road team is actually the favorite. Toronto, the home team, is at 2.97. Atlanta sitting at 2.2. Atlanta coming off an impressive win against Inter Miami. Toronto obviously fell apart against New York Red Bulls last week. Where are the stats showing us to go here?
Yeah, I'm just pulling that up. So I will admit that I'm slightly biased here, and that Atlanta are one of my favorite MLS teams, and I'm well stacked with them on a Sorare perspective in the forward lines. But I think they're a great team to watch. They're full of goals, and I just can't see past this game being the potentially the game that has the most goals of all the fixtures this weekend. Atlanta, after a bit of they've had some major problems with injuries, and that's certainly affected their early season form. But they've lost just once in the last 5, whereas Toronto have lost 3 of the last 5 and won only once. I think Atlanta are worthy favourites, and I think potentially taking Atlanta and over 2.5 goals at 3.3 is quite an attractive proposition.
Yeah, I think I wrote last week about how, and I do a piece for you guys every week, and I think I wrote about just how important Joseph Martinez is to Atlanta United, and when he is healthy and when he's playing, they're a much different team. And I don't think people really kind of respect that enough. Toronto has the revolving door of goalkeepers right now. They have basically no one on the back line outside of Salcedo, who's even remotely trustworthy. This may improve at some point for Toronto, but right now it's not great. One thing, Osorio did come back midweek in the Canadian Championship. He subbed in. Jaquil Marshall-Ruddy, I believe, subbed in the Canadian Championship this weekend. That was the semifinal, if I'm not mistaken. They played Montreal. So if they get some guys back from injury, this could look like a different Toronto team, which is maybe something to consider. But right now, I do think Atlanta has a decent edge. And I think you're right. There are probably goals in this game between Atlanta and Toronto, just how bad Toronto has been defensively. I think I wrote about that last week as well, about, I think, something like 24 games in a row that they have not kept a clean sheet, Toronto, which is, I believe, one of the longer streaks in MLS history. So, yeah, it's tough to see goals not being scored in this game. It's tough to see Toronto. I could see maybe a draw at some point, like a 2-2 type of thing. But yeah, I do think your front line there of Atlanta United players, and I do own Luis Araujo as well. I think your front line should have a decent matchup this week.
Yeah, I mean, you basically, with that clean sheet record of Toronto, you're basically having to bet that Toronto are going to score at least 2 goals to have any chance of winning, because if Atlanta are going to at least score at least 1, makes things very different. So maybe a high scoring draw. But I just think I feel like there's momentum going with Atlanta, particularly with Martinez come back. I think he's come back at the right time. They were starting to improve their form, and I think he can push them onto the next level. What do you think about the goalkeeper situation in Atlanta? I think it'd be Rios staying in goal until they bring in a new keeper in the transfer window.
Yeah, I think it's Rocco's job, which does scare me a little bit if we're being honest. He's young, he's talented, he can be very good, but he's young, like he's like 19. So yeah, I don't know if that's a positive for Atlanta. I kind of would rather see them just roll a Shuttleworth and just take the below average goalkeeper play as opposed to some potentially shocking goalkeeper play. But yeah, I think it'll be Rocco until they've confirmed they're bringing in that guy from Mexico. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but they are bringing in a goalkeeper, and like we said, that the window opens on July 7th, so he'll be eligible to play after that. So yeah, Atlanta in the back line is scary, especially with no Miles Robinson back there. So yeah, again, could be goals.
But I think if they're putting Rios in there over Shuttleworth, I think that indicates that the Atlanta camp is confident in the team, able to go out there and get the win. Because you want to give a young guy minutes and experience, and of course they have to get it somewhere at some point. But you also wouldn't take the risk of a hammering and blowing his confidence, which you may never recover. So I think the fact that they're putting him in there indicates their confidence in him and in the team. So there's definitely some nerves around that for anyone who's sort of backing Atlanta or backing a defensive stack for Sorare. But I would take that as a positive coming out of the Atlanta camp.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a swing for the fence from Atlanta's part, and they're not shy about trying to take swings for the fences. I did look up my article from last week, so 22 straight at the time, so now 23 straight that Toronto has failed to keep a clean sheet in. Atlanta has won 11 of 17 when Joseph Martinez starts. They have won 2 out of 12 when he does not start. So it's a completely different team, and that's home and away, just regardless of home and away. So they are
incredible stat.
Potentially dangerous. Almeida is still suspended for this game, so they still are not at full strength, but they have a lot of weapons. Also under the radar, Emerson Heineman is also back in contention in the starting lineup, and he's one of my favorite guys to kind of more of an under the radar type midfielder, but he really brings a presence in the midfield that I think Atlanta has been missing since Ozzy Alonso went down with his injury. He's coming back off of an ACL, I believe. So he was out for a long time, and he's been coming off the bench for a month or so. So they're just kind of easing him back in. He played from the start, I believe, for the first time against Miami, and he was brilliant. So we'll see if he gets a second straight start here at Toronto.
Yeah. I think just one final note on that terrible clean sheet record from Toronto. I mean, we were chatting just off air before we started the show that it's almost reaching the point of taking the contrary view of they got to keep a clean sheet at some point. But we had a look at the odds, and they're 4.5. And to be fair, with the kind of record that Toronto's got, I think that's nowhere near high enough. But it's probably something worth keeping an eye on in the coming weeks. If we find a team that's less, should we say, less dynamic up front, but potentially backing a Toronto clean sheet along the way would be advisable, because it can't go on forever.
They host Columbus in the midweek next week. That's not horrible. Columbus is not exactly firing on all cylinders,
No, particularly up front. So, like Miguel Berry is not really doing much. I'm not sure who else is playing up front.
They bought that striker from Watford, and he can't play yet. So, Chucho Hernandez, something like that.
Something like that, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think keep an eye on the odds on that one. If you can get a decent price, potentially the Columbus game could be the one.
Yeah. Let's go to Inter Miami and Minnesota United. Now, Inter is a team that benched Gonzalo Higuain and has since looked like a half-decent MLS team, which has shocked me, like absolutely shocked me. I thought they were the worst team in the MLS.
Me too.
I still kind of think they're the worst team in the MLS, but at least they are showing team spirit. They're not giving up on the season. They're not, just throwing in the towel and saying, oh, well, we're just garbage, which they are. But, they are trying, and they are putting together some results. Give Phil Neville some credit for that. I've been Phil Neville's harshest critic, but I will give him some credit for that. They did, however, lose Robbie Robinson to a season-ending injury. So that is no bueno. They just don't have, they're rumored to be trying to get 3 TAM level attacking players is what I heard, which is a lot. Like, I don't know how they have the budget for this with the restrictions that they've had because of the 4th DP signing. from last year. They signed Blaise Matuidi, which was against the league rules. So they got some sanctions for that. I don't know how they have the budget to do that, but apparently that's what they're rumored to be doing. So reinforcements potentially on the way. Odds on this game, 2.41 for Inter Miami. They're actually slight favorites, 2.77 over Minnesota United.
Yeah, so I think before we get into that game, I think perhaps for listeners who aren't as familiar with the MLS, do you want to give a quick explanation around what DP and TAM is?
Yeah, so MLS has a salary cap, which is not like most of the other European leagues. Basically, you can only spend so much on your player wages. DP is a term that means designated player, and basically that means that you can pay them whatever that you want, and it doesn't count against the salary cap. So those are your guys like Lorenzo Insigne, Joseph Martinez. Those are the big name, high profile guys from Europe coming in on huge contracts. They can pay $20 million a year. Nobody cares. By the way, the salary cap in MLS is something like $5 or $6 million. Insigne is going to make triple that when he comes. So that's cool. But yeah, so DP, you get 3 of them. It's also called the David Beckham rule because they invented this rule so that they could sign David Beckham back in the day. You get 3 of those. You can pay them whatever you want. TAM is targeted allocation money. So that's something where if you're not quite DP level, but you're a little higher than what normal MLS guys make, you can use this stuff called targeted allocation money, which is fake money, but it like brings down your salary cap impact. So if you're between 1.7 million and 600,000, they can use TAM to bring your contract down. So these are good, solid, quality players. They're not like world superstars, but they are, expected to be starters when you're using TAM on guys. So when I say 3 TAM signings, I mean 3, especially for Miami, probably the best players on their team. 3 impact, decent, quality starters.
That's great. And I think Miami is pretty relevant to all of this in that they've had a shocking time with their designated players. Basically, everyone that they've brought in has either massively underperformed or, as you highlighted with Matuidi, so they basically try to pull a fast one and bringing Matuidi in, as I believe, effectively having 4 DPs. They got caught out. They got fined.
Yeah. They tried to call him a TAM player, but they were actually paying him too much for him to be a TAM player. Yeah.
So, and the DPs should really be the difference makers in your team. So if you're hamstrung and either picking up really bad ones, like Gonzalo Higuain has basically been at the retirement village, it seems, since it's come to the MLS. Right. It really puts you at a disadvantage to a lot of other teams, and you've got to work really, really hard on the youth signings you pick up and your more standard signings. So I think that was really a problem for them last year. I think they're still definitely suffering from that now. But like you say, I haven't been a fan of Miami. Easily put them in my bottom 3. I thought Phil Neville's days were numbered, but they've actually given a bit of a fist for it this year. Yep. They're actually showing a bit of fight and a bit of team play. And, I might be almost getting to the point of giving Phil Neville the benefit of the doubt on this one, which I didn't think I would say a couple of months ago. But, coming into this, they've won 4 of the last 5 at home, which is very solid. And Minnesota, who they're welcoming, have lost 4 of their last 5. So getting sort of Miami around 2.4 to 2.5, actually, can't believe I'm going to say this, but I actually think Miami could be good for the win here.
Don't say it. Don't do it. You can't give in to this.
It's an illusion.
No way. I'm going with talent all day. Reynoso and Laud and those guys. There's just way too much talent on Minnesota's side for them to be an underdog. Like, I don't care if it's in Miami. And full credit to the Inter Miami fans. They have maybe the best fan base in all of MLS because those guys showed up when it looked like Miami had no chance of being any good. They showed up and they have a good atmosphere every single weekend. So full credit to them. They do love their football down in Miami. But yeah, you're talking about a Minnesota team with real talent coming in here.
No, and in fairness, so I might walk back my statement a little bit because Minnesota are one of my little dark horse teams that I always check out early on in the fixture list because they have a wonderful spine of a team. Yeah. They don't always get the results that they deserve, but when they fire, I mean, you got the keeper's decent in St. Clair. I forget who the centre half is, but then you got Reynoso and Fragapani, and it's the spine of Minnesota is very solid, and they can definitely get a result out of this team, out of this game. So it's been interesting to watch, but I wouldn't go too heavy on either side.
Here's actually kind of a thought that I just had that is maybe a little, not mainstream. Maybe I'm a little crazy, but I actually think maybe Adrian Heath holding this team back. Like Adrian Heath has had kind of some iffy stops before, and they don't. It's been like 3 years where this team has had the talent to make serious pushes at the playoffs. And they did have the 1 year where they got to the Western Conference Final and were 2-0 up in Seattle and blew it. But that's kind of what I mean. Like they were 2-0 up in Seattle and blew it. And like, that's kind of like coaching. That's mentality. Like you can't do that. You have the talent to go and be this great team. And he's been almost to the point of being whiny for me. Like he's been complaining about players and effort, and they got knocked out of the Open Cup and he lost it. And I don't know. I potentially I'm not saying that they will, but if Adrian Heath doesn't have his job at the end of the year, potentially this is a team to watch make a deep run in the playoffs. We'll see.
So you feel that they're a team that's sort of playing with the handbrake on at the moment? You think the coach is sort of holding them back, slightly negative tactics, not having the confidence to go and try and dominate a game?
I don't even know if it's negative tactics. It's just like he's kind of almost not pushing them. Like, like the great coaches get more out of their team than the sum of their parts. What's that saying? They get more than the sum of their parts. He just doesn't seem to. Yeah, he doesn't seem to be getting that. So I don't know. Minnesota's lost 7 of its last 11 matches, which is absurd to me.
Which is absurd to me. When I watch them, that's not a team that loses 7 out of 11.
No.
When you actually watch them play a game.
They had lost 7 of their previous 34 regular season games dating back to May 2021. I don't know. This is a weird one. My gut says Minnesota's great value at 2.77 against Miami. Wherever the game is played, you can play it on Mars if you want. I don't care. But I don't know. Do you think there's goals in this game?
No, I actually think that the value for this one is probably under 2.5. That's about even money at the moment, and that's showing a sort of 4 to 8% margin on the AI. So I think this is a 0-0, 1-0, 1-1 sort of type of game. I think, particularly at Robinson as well. I think these will be 2 pretty evenly matched teams. Neither of which will probably go too strongly on the offensive. First port of call will be not to lose. So I can see this being a 1 or 2 goal game. Yeah.
I mean, if you're in Miami, you're kind of happy with a draw against Minnesota. And if you're Minnesota, getting a road point when you've lost 7 of 11 is not the worst thing in the world either. So this could even, it could be 1-1 in the 75th minute, and both teams could just set up shop and just not get seed.
And be happy with it.
Just not even try. Let's go to Houston against Chicago. This is an interesting one. The Dynamo have been overperforming for sure. The Fire overperformed for the first 2 weeks, and then they have dipped into oblivion since then. But they got the benefit of playing the worst team in the league, DC United, last week, and got the, albeit somewhat lucky, home win against DC last week. But does that win just kind of spark something in them is kind of the question. Odds on this game 2.21 for Houston as the home team. Chicago is coming in at 3.15.
I had a look at this one, and to be honest, it's just a game I would under normal circumstances would just be swerving from a betting perspective. I just could not see anything of major interest in this. Houston 38% win percentage at home, Chicago 13% away win percentage. Nothing's particularly attractive in the goal markets. It's just a one game where I just think anything could happen. This could be a 0-0, it could be a 2-2. But it's really hard to get a read on this one, I think, from my perspective.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's really watched Houston. At least I haven't watched Houston almost ever, because they just aren't exciting like that. I just don't wake up in the morning and say, I got to watch me some Houston Dynamo today. There's just other teams that I have to watch as opposed to Houston, but they are kind of flying under the radar a little bit. Houston, let's see, Dynamo have lost 6 of their last 8 MLS matches, including the last 2 in a row. So that's interesting. They have kind of gone downhill. The Fire have only won 2 of their 36 away matches against Western Conference opponents since the start of 2014.
Wow.
One of those wins was against Houston, though. So, who knows? Even MLS doesn't know what they're talking, doesn't know which way this is going to go. The odds.
I mean, on paper, you'd have to say Houston.
Yeah, you probably lean Houston a little bit, but I just don't. Yeah, I'm with you.
I wouldn't be going anywhere, particularly with any strong opinion.
Also, if Shaqiri doesn't play, I don't know how Chicago is going to win a game against a real team. I mean, they were lucky to even beat us, and we were garbage. Like, that was the worst game I've seen DC play in 2 years, and they were fairly lucky to win at home against us. So maybe I would lean Houston, but apparently, I mean, Houston's been bad too. Houston does at least have Seba Ferreira though. So, I think I'm with you. I think kind of staying away from this game is probably the best move. If you're going to go somewhere, maybe Houston. Austin and Dallas. This is a Texas derby, I think. There's some name for it between Austin, Dallas, and Houston. And I feel like it's the Texas derby, but I could be wrong. Anyway, this is the first meeting of the season between these two teams. Dallas drubbed Austin in Austin last year, so maybe a bit of a revenge game for Austin. Dallas is kind of slowed down quite a bit from what we expected of them from the first, 15 games of the season. How many games are we in?
Yeah.
Anyway, the last 2 have been pretty bad for Dallas, if I remember correctly. Austin is a 2.15 favorite, 3.12 on the visitors.
Yeah, again, I think this is probably a game I wouldn't be taking a massively strong opinion on. I mean, Dallas have won all 3 games against Austin, but I mean, admittedly, that's a very small sample size with Austin only into their second season so far.
In an expansion year. Yeah.
Yeah. Austin are very solid at home. Their win percentage is not bad at 57%. They really don't concede much at home. They're averaging 0.71 goals per game. So, and with Dallas, you just don't know which one's going to turn up. They can. Yeah. I think that's indicative of being quite a young side. They can go to Orlando and win 3-1, and then lose the next game at home to Minnesota. So, it's going to be interesting. It's a solid defense, which could be enough for Austin to edge this. But if the Dallas forward lines is the better version that we see of it, it could be a fascinating contest between a solid defense and some very dynamic young forward play. So again, I think it'd be one I'd be interested to watch, but not necessarily take a position on from a betting perspective.
These teams are 3 and 4 in the standings right now, so both have had good seasons. And I honestly might actually just lean Dallas a little bit here. 3.12 on the road. They did kind of have Austin's number a little bit last year. And like you said, they can kind of be really good or really bad depending on their day. And with those kind of teams, I like to kind of fade them when they're favorites and take them as underdogs. And here they're an underdog. They could be up for this game. It's a rivalry game. They don't have anything midweek. They're not playing Open Cup or anything. So it's just this game. I don't know. I might like Dallas a little bit. We'll see.
Yeah, I think that's a fair shout, though. I think if you got Ferreira and Velasco firing, why not?
Yeah, they did look bad against Vancouver, though. I watched that game. They looked bad. We'll see. I don't know. I like Dallas a little bit. RSL and Columbus. So we've got a few more games to get through here, so we'll speed up a little bit. RSL against Columbus. RSL is 1-8-1 right now as the home team. Columbus coming in as a pretty heavy underdog, 4.22.
Yeah, I mean, Salt Lake, they're doing some good things up there, I think, at the moment. The home record's been fantastic this season. Where have I got that? They've won 4 of the last 5 and 86% home win record. Columbus are decidedly average at the moment in all areas. They've only won 1 or 2 away from home, I think. I'm still at that stage where I can't trust Salt Lake enough for me to put money on, but that's more my biased opinion from what I've seen from previous seasons. And this is very much a different side and management. Well, everything from the top to bottom, they're doing a lot of positive things, and you could probably expand on the detail on that more than I can. I mean, on paper, you're looking at Salt Lake, but the value potentially is in Columbus at that price. But I would take a very brave man to back Columbus in any game at the moment. I think it'd be. I don't have a thing that the stats would be Salt Lake for sure.
It's interesting you say that. I think if you put Seattle's name over Salt Lake and you look at the stats, you're going to say, oh, yeah, this is an easy Seattle win. Why are they 1-8-1?
Correct. Yeah.
But it's Salt Lake. Like, you're right. Like, the talent is there, but at the same time, like, do you really feel confident with that? I mean, like Cordoba, who's like a failure at Augsburg, like, I don't know. I love that. Bobby Wood, like U.S. national team striker from like 2014. I don't know. The saving grace might be that Miguel Berry has been absolute garbage, and Chucho Hernandez, I think is his name, Chucho. He can't play in this game yet. So, maybe Zelerion does something, special. RSL's won 7 of 8 at home, though, I believe, and 1-8-1 for a team that's won 7 of 8 at home against just a kind of an average team is not bad. I mean, you are looking at a Columbus team. Even Columbus can't figure out if they're good or bad. Like, they're 11th in the Eastern Conference right now. They're only ahead of Toronto, DC, and Chicago, but their goal differential is +1. Like, they're a decently solid team. They only give up 17 goals, which is very good. I don't know. I just kind of see a low scoring. It'll kind of be decided one way or the other. Why not back a huge underdog if it's just one kick or the other that it's going to make? I'm not saying that I think Columbus probably wins this game, but there probably is some value in Columbus.
Yeah, and I think that that reasoning sound. The AI, Predictology AI, is doing the same thing, saying the value is in at Columbus at above 4.2. Columbus did go to Atlanta 2 games ago and got a win, but then they gave Charlotte their second point on the road in the last game,
and made me look foolish in the process.
Yeah, like Columbus, not setting the world alight, but they don't win by many and they don't lose by many. So, I might actually go out on a limb and say I fancy a draw in this one, potentially a 0-0.
Yeah, I think I might take a 1-1 draw, actually, because I think you could definitely see Zelerion just doing some stupid, and Columbus isn't going to give up many goals.
He's back now.
Is he?
He's been injured for a couple of weeks, right, Zelerion? I think he's back this weekend, but I haven't checked.
I thought he was playing, but I could be wrong.
I think he might be right.
Let's see.
I mean, the
San
draw
Jose
price is. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
No, draw price is actually fairly high. 3.58.
Yeah, so I think that
seems a little high.
Could be the way to go. Yeah.
No, we'll see. I don't have a great read, but I always like taking underdogs when I don't have a great read. And that's probably why I lose a lot. San Jose and LA Galaxy, don't even have to worry about this game. It was announced about 20 minutes before we started this show that this game has been canceled due to a power outage at the stadium. So that's a weird reason to cancel a football match, but hey, it's been moved to September. So we'll break that down in September. Portland, it's called the California Classico, I believe as well. It's a fun name. Portland and Colorado. Portland is a 2-1-8 favorite at home. Colorado's traveling with a 3-1-8 underdog. Where are we going here?
It's another tricky one. I think these are two sides I think would openly admit that they're probably slightly underperforming based on their preseason expectations. The one stat that stood out for me on this one is that Portland have seen both teams to score in 4 of the last 5 games and 69% across the season, which is considerably higher than the league average, which is around about where's the league average? Where's it gone? Which is about 54-55%. So I'm going to call this one an easy one and just go for both teams to get a goal in this game at around 1.7.
Yeah, Portland has been pretty shockingly bad defensively. One thing to keep an eye on, I forget which center half it is, but they got a center half back last week maybe. that I think I heard is very, very good. I'm gonna actually have to go and find out who that is. That just came back, but Portland has been very, very bad defensively. They do score goals though. They're not, their goal differential isn't horrible. So, I mean, I wouldn't say they're a bad team, but they're 13th in the West. So, like, massively underperforming from the team that made the MLS Cup final last year. And then Colorado, who won the West last year, is 9th out of a playoff spot. So I'd say both teams would say they're massively underperforming. Neither team would really be super happy with how they've been performing up to this point. Colorado's at least been better at home. I don't know that I trust them on the road, though, but I also don't trust Portland. So I don't know that I have a real good read on this game. I'm going to try and find who that defender was. Do you have any other thoughts about this game here before we?
No, I think, it's too hard to call on any of the markets, but there's certainly the stats points towards both teams getting a goal. So if I was forced to put a bet on this one, that would be the route I would take.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, it's not a bad move with Colorado away from home. Their defense is not nearly as good as it is at home. LAFC hosting New York Red Bulls, team that has moved on to the semifinal of the U.S. Open Cup, thrashing New York City FC in the midweek in the Hudson River Derby. LAFC is 1.9 as the home favorite. New York, traveling across the country, is a 3.71 road underdog. How do we see this one going?
Well, I think it's potentially the game of the weekend, and it's on I think if I got this right, about 8 p.m. on Sunday evening for UK viewers. It's going to be a fascinating game. New York Red Bulls are a very high energy team. Generally come out of the blocks pretty quickly. Sometimes struggle with sustaining that for the full game. So I can certainly see this starting off as New York trying to strike the first blow. I think if Los Angeles can weather that for the first half an hour of the game, they should have the quality to sort of come out on top by the end of the match. But those first 30 minutes will be very key. I believe LA are top of the Western Conference. And we're actually top of the whole league. Top of the whole league, yeah, and they've still got a DP spot, a designated player spot to come in.
Chiellini's still coming.
Chiellini's arriving in the next couple of weeks. They had a great win last week. I think Los Angeles just they seem to have a similar, I would say, momentum and vibe that I saw with New York last year, and I think LA are definitely going to be one of the teams contesting the end of season matches. So yeah, I think it's going to be an entertaining game, and it will very much see how Red Bulls can target them early on.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you'd have to say there are probably 5 teams that are dangerous as far as winning the MLS Cup: New York City, New York Red Bulls, Philadelphia Union, LAFC, and where's the other one? Maybe there's just 4. Who was I thinking? I thought I counted 5. Anyway, yeah, I guess there's only 4. So New York City, New York Red Bulls, Philadelphia Union, and LAFC. Those are the teams that, Seattle. That's who I'm thinking of. Goodness gracious.
The most obvious one.
Goodness gracious. Well, I was looking at the standings and it's like 1, 2, 3 in the East, 1, and then 7 in the West. It's like, oh yeah, but it's Seattle. Seattle obviously has a chance. So yeah, 5 teams. But yeah, these are 2 of the big heavyweights. I don't know if it's the game of the weekend for me because 2 of the other heavyweights are in the next game that we're going to break down. And I kind of prefer that. I prefer those 2 teams, but LAFC against New York, you got to factor in travel. You got to factor in US Open Cup with New York having just played 3 days ago, I think, before they play, or no, I guess this game is Sunday. So 4 days. But then they have a cross.
And they played a pretty strong lineup, right? In the cup.
They played everybody. Yeah, they played everybody. Goalkeeper and everything. New York City rested Sean Johnson and they had 2 guys sent off and, they made subs. So like New York is probably better off than the Red Bulls are, but Red Bulls did get Lewis Morgan out in the 60th minute. So yeah, I don't know, but I still, cross country flights are no joke. Red Bulls with their system specifically, you kind of have to be up for it. But it's a big game. You never know. They might show up a little bit. I kind of would lean LAFC at 1.9 on this, but I think these odds are about right. I don't think there's a whole lot in this game either way. I think you're right, though.
generally have a
Early
rule.
goal might be something to watch.
Yeah.
Like a goal within the
I
first
think this
15 minutes or so.
Yeah, I think this would be a good game for traders. Certainly, watching those first 30 minutes could create some opportunities, particularly if Red Bulls come out of the blocks. And I think it will be a game that, if we do get an early goal, it could be a bit of a tennis match, sort of back and forth for both sides, sort of taking the upper hand. But I have a general rule when two fairly high-end, decently matched teams come together, side with a draw.
That's an interesting one. That's not a bad one either.
More often than that comes through.
Yeah.
Works very well on the Premier League when one of the top four play each other. Get on the draw.
Because realistically, for both teams, a draw is not a bad result here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't think that's bad, but I think both teams will, at least early on, both teams will come out and play, and then it'll kind of depend on what happens as we get into the game. Two more games that we need to get through here. So for me, the game of the week, Philadelphia Union and NYCFC. Talked about NYCFC getting knocked out of the Open Cup in the midweek. Philadelphia is 2.53 as the home team. They are slight favorites over New York City at 2.7. Where are we going here?
It's going to be a very interesting one. I mean, how much do you think the MLS game will influence New York coming into this?
The Open Cup game, you mean?
Yeah.
Like the midweek?
Yeah, in terms of losing a derby, getting quite comprehensively beaten, the sendings off. Do you think that their focus will have dropped, or will there be any lingering effects of that mentally coming into this game, not just physically?
See, this is something that we need to find out about NYC, and this will be a great litmus test for where they are, because Ronnie Dyla just left. So normally I would say, yeah, they'll be fine. They'll bounce back. They got talent all over the place. Talis Magno is maybe the best player in this league. Tati Castellanos is the best player in this league. They have absolute talent everywhere. Sean Johnson didn't play in that game, and I think he probably would have made a pretty big difference for NYC. But you're right. Yeah, it's a rivalry game. Those two teams do not like each other. It was very clear on the field. They were hard tackles flying in left and right. So maybe they're just beat up too. And now they play a Union team who will beat you up as well. It's on the road. Union are a tough team to play away. And I think that's why you see Union as a slight favorite in this game, is because of that midweek game. And I think, honestly, I don't have an answer for you, because we have to find out what New York City is made of under this new coach. Is he going to continue this bounce back mentality that Ronnie Dyla had? Ronnie Dyla is a great coach. There's a reason Standard Liège bought him out of his contract. So we'll see. I think in this game is going to be a great litmus test for where NYC is moving towards the playoffs now, because both these teams are going to make the playoffs, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I think it's worth pointing out as well that Philadelphia won in New York in the earlier fixture back in March, 2-0. And I think that's probably what NYC's only defeat this season, or certainly the only defeat at home. So, they have proved that they can cause New York problems. I think the other query I would have, do you know if Thiago Martins played in midweek?
He did not. He is, as far as I know.
And I would suspect he's unlikely to be out for this weekend. And I think that does weaken them a little bit at the back line. So
Chanot is a real good replacement, though. If you're going to pick a guy to come off the bench, like Chanot is a guy, I'm
the guy who's got his super S. I know that, but it's still, any change into a defensive back line can cause problems, right? If they haven't been playing frequently, and I think very hard to bet on this game, but I think it's a game we can all learn a huge amount from about both of these sides for what's to come.
I was going to say NYC had something like 600 minutes in a row without conceding a goal before this Red Bulls game. That streak is still intact in MLS play, but it'll be interesting to see if Sean Johnson coming back in, they get back to that kind of defensive, we're not going to allow any goals kind of mindset.
Game against Colorado, right?
Before the Colorado game. You're right. It was before the Colorado game. They said that on the broadcast on the midweek game. But yeah, this will be an interesting one. The other thing of note here Philadelphia is missing a ton of its bench. They have 4 guys off at USA U20 duty, which are most of their impact subs. So that's Paxton Aronson, Jack McGlynn, Quinn Sullivan, and somebody else who I forget are all gone. So does Philly have firepower to bring in if this is a close game late? Potentially that may swing things as well. New York certainly does. They have a ton of firepower on their bench.
Yeah, they're a wonderful team and a wonderful squad. Yeah, definitely. I think that's very interesting. I think that then would lead me to think that this is a game, firstly, to watch rather than get involved with early. But potentially, if it's pretty close in those last 30 minutes, getting into a trade on New York in the last 30 could be an interesting route, because even with the game last week, they really threw the kitchen sink at Colorado in the last 15, 20 minutes, but it finished 1-1. And I think New York are a team that won't give up if it's 1-1.
Yeah, they think they should win every game. And I will say, though, I would have said the same thing about Red Bulls in New York in the midweek. I would have said if it's tied at halftime, New York City's probably going to win. And New York Red Bulls came out and won 2-0, both goals in the second half. So, hey, what do we know? Last game, Vancouver against New England. Vancouver all of a sudden has hit a wonderful run of form. They got smacked by Seattle last midweek. But aside from that, they have been trouncing people left and right. They are 2.48 slight favorites against New England 2.6. New England has sort of found a little bit of form with Dylan Barrero starting to show some of the dynamism that Tajon Buchanan had last year that they have been sorely missing in the beginning of this season. Vancouver is the slight home favorite. Where are we going here?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting game. I think we can forgive most teams getting smacked by Seattle, and like you say, the 3 games have been very positive results, particularly for a Vancouver side, because they had a bit of a poor run, certainly when they lost Hassel in goal. I believe he's still out. Is that right?
He is still out, as far as I know. Cody Cropper's still in there.
Whereas New England, I think we're still sort of determining the impact of Buxer leaving, I would say, aren't we? Obviously, Carlos Gil is a wonderful player. They've won 3 of the last 5, unbeaten in all of those 5. I would be edging towards New England for this one. I think to get New England at 2.6 against, if you look at Vancouver across the whole season rather than the last 3 or 4 games, that's a pretty good price. I would have to be taking New England in this one. I had a feeling
that you might say that. And the model says that as well. They like New England over Vancouver with the analytics at 2.6. I think that's a pretty good bet there. But you know me, I love my Vancouver Whitecaps. Nobody else will watch them. They have just so much talent everywhere. BC Place is tough to play. It'll be very fun to watch World Cup games at BC Place, by the way. I would love to see that atmosphere. So that'll happen in 2026. Long way from now. But Vancouver's going to play there for right now. And man, is this team, could they be very, very good? They got that new DP, what's his name, Corbo or something? Defensive midfielder, and that's the position that they have been absolutely desperate for. He played 60 minutes against Dallas. Well, he was out there. Dallas's expected goals were like 0.05 or some ridiculously low number. And then they subbed him off because he's still getting up to match fitness. And Dallas immediately shot up. They ended up at like 1.5 or something. They actually had more expected goals in that game than Vancouver did. But they were all after he came out of that game. I can see him playing this game and just taking Carlos Gil. Carlos Gil is a tough guy to take out of a game. But if anyone's going to do it, I love to see this matchup. Like, this is the one matchup that I'm most looking forward to in this game. Let's put it that way. I don't know if he can take him, but it'd be interesting to see for sure. And 2.48 on a home team, especially BC Place, Vancouver really doesn't lose. I like, I always like Vancouver. I'm always going to pick Vancouver.
Vancouver falls into the Salt Lake category for me. It's just a team that I never ever end up picking. I'm always picking against them. But some very interesting insights there on the matchup, and that's given me another angle that I'll be very keen to watch the game on. I think one thing I would highlight is that Vancouver have only won 20% of their matchups against New England historically. That's 2 wins out of the 10, whereas New England have won 5 and drawn 2 of those. So the historical form is certainly with New England.
How dare you bring up historical form? if you're going to use facts, there's no point in even having these discussions. No, Vancouver has been pretty much a garbage team for the entirety of their existence, minus Alphonso Davies. But they have used the Alphonso Davies money very well. If you look at some of their signings, Caicedo is going to be a monster in this league. He's just still too young for me. But they've got some dudes that are coming along that, I mean, they can't find a place for Brian White in this team, and he was great last year. So I don't know. I like Vancouver. I think they have talent, but nobody ever watches them because
I'm not a fan of Brian White either.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not either. But he was good last year. He was really good. He was scoring left and right. But it was kind of one season wonder for me. I don't think he's really that good a player.
Well, this sounds like our side bet of the week. You've got Vancouver, I got New England. One of us do a forfeit next week then.
Oh, New England's 100% winning this game now. New England's 100% winning this game now. I'm going against the analytics and you. There's no way I'm winning. But yeah, that's definitely going to be our side bet of the week. So we're going to do, I think at the end here, we're going to kind of try to wrap up with a little segment to kind of help people who are maybe a little newer, who maybe don't quite understand or still trying to learn, I guess, how everything works, and maybe things with the site itself, with Predictology, maybe just betting topics in general. But we're going to call it Predictology 101, just kind of classes in session type of thing. We're going to start this week. I noticed something on the website here. I'm going over the match list, and there's little green stars next to some of these games here. Can you tell me these green stars haven't been there, have they, or am I just blind?
No, this is one of the things I love about you, Chris, your attention to detail. And you are indeed right that these are a new addition in the last couple of days. So what this is indicating, we've actually got three different. If you go to, it's a great place to start for anyone new to Predictology or anyone just still learning the ropes. You head into the match analysis section, and from there you can sort of dive into each of the individual leagues, or you can just look at the long list match view, which shows games by kickoff. So say you got a couple of hours in an evening and you're looking for a suitable game to take a position on. What it'll do now is highlight in either gold, red, or green whether there's an additional insight around that match. So that could be that it's a game that's been flagged by the member prediction models. And if you click into it, you'll see what the models are recommending. It could be also around our match shortlists, which are predominantly used by our football traders. So it'll be showing you games which are profiled to fit certain markets and how to trade those during the match. Or it would be, if you've been with the Predictology for a little while and you built your own systems through the system builder, this will also tell you if one of your systems has got a read on that particular game. So it's a really quick, easy way to find games relevant to your models or to your interests.
This is great because I just kind of come in here and just kind of look through the match list, and I don't have a ton of experience like kind of navigating the website. So I don't know how to follow all the different models and everything, but this kind of shows you all in one place. Like, okay, I know Cincinnati, Orlando City, there's a star in that game. Montreal and Charlotte, there's a star in that game. We talked about Montreal having some nice value there. There's a star in the Vancouver Whitecaps New England game. I'm going to assume that's on Vancouver, the value there, and not on New England, which is highlighted. But, I'm just going to assume that was a typo on your part. But, really cool that you can kind of see all of that all in one spot. And you said we could actually customize like our own betting systems, and it'll show the stars there as well, right?
That's right. So our proprietary tool, and this is sort of where Predictology started, and we've grown and developed out from there, was our system builder tool. So feeding into that is about 400,000 matches covering 68 leagues and competitions going back 10, 15 years. And there's over 100 different sort of filters and variables. So you can go in there and sort of say, right, I want to have a look at the MLS. I want to look at the last 5 years, and I want to see what would happen if I backed a team that had lost the last 3 games. And that within a few seconds, that report will come back, give you detailed insights, whether you would have made a profit or not, and then you can start building additional filters. I mean, that's a very simplistic example, but we have a lot of members who've built some very good systems, and this is another way of sort of having to go into the system builder, run your system, and see if you've got any games for the weekend. You can just jump straight into the match analysis page, and it's indicating for you which games your systems are already highlighting.
I will say, if you were betting on an MLS team that had lost their last 3 games, you'd be betting on Cincinnati a lot the last few years. But this year, maybe not as bad of a bet. So yeah, I think that's really cool. Color-coded little stars that you can kind of just go through and quickly see what is coming up. So I think that's a cool little place to hang things up. Do you have any last minute tips or anything else you want to cover before you wrap things up?
Yeah, I thought there was just one thing I thought would be quite a fun feature for us to do on a weekly basis. I've just sort of picked out 3 matches that I'm interested to sort of roll up into an accumulator bet, or I believe, stateside you'd call that a parlay. This is not in the MLS. This is actually just using one of my internal reports, which highlights very sort of strong market expectations. So the 3 games I've highlighted for this week would be in the Irish Premier League, which I believe is actually this evening in UK time. It would be Shamrock Rovers to win at home to Bohemians. Then we'd be jetting over to Norway in the afternoon and taking the Division 1 game Start v Kongsvinger, backing that for over 2.5 at 1.454. And the final game to roll out our mini Acca would be Saturday evening UK time over in Brazil, Sao Paulo, to beat Juventude, again about 1.52. Rolling those 3 teams up would give you returns of approximately 3.6, which I think is a decent bet if you're looking for a little interest to keep it running over the weekend.
So that's the bet of the week, right? That bet. This is that bet that betting podcast. Well, it's that bet of the week, right? Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I'll give you one I like. I really like Montreal. I think I might take Montreal on my own as the home team at 1.88. That's just way too much value against Charlotte. And Charlotte proved me wrong last week, so they can't do it 2 weeks in a row, right? I defy them to do it 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, so I would agree. And look, in terms of a single bet for the weekend, I mean, that was a bit more of a fun parlay bet. But as you've taken Montreal, which would have been first pick, I'm gonna.
That's why I said it first, because I knew I only had one.
you tripped me there, huh?
I got him. I got you.
Yeah, I'm torn between Atlanta and goals, which I think is a great price at 3.3. But having sort of going through our discussions today, I find it very hard to ignore Seattle winning at 1.77 as well. So at about 1.7. So I'm going to go with Seattle alongside your Montreal.
Yeah, I think both of those are pretty solid and home teams, and everything you look for in a nice little solid bet. Yeah. Well, that I think so about wraps.
Bet of the week and our parlay of the week.
Oh, hey, we actually have one more thing. We had a question too we should get to. He wants to know who the best MLS goalkeeper is for Sorare Academy. We can kind of spin this to who's got the best chance to keep a clean sheet this week. Let's go that route.
Yeah, I think I should probably give a little backstory to this. So this is one of our Discord members, particular Discord members. Where is he? I forgot his name now. I think it's Dave. Dave. He actually came 35th in the Sorare Academy, which I think is a fantastic result. And that was with a DMP goalkeeper, our man Shuttleworth at Atlanta. So that's why looking for a steer on potentially the best goalkeeper to use this weekend. So where do you think the clean sheet's coming in?
Let's see. Clean sheets. I mean, the obvious one is Toronto, right? I mean, clearly they haven't kept a clean sheet in 23 straight games. This is clearly going to be the game that they do it. Clean sheets. If Alec Khan plays, I think there's a decent shot for Cincinnati of a clean sheet. Let's see if there's anybody else. You know what? I'll take Steve Clark. I'll take the Dynamo, because if Shaqiri doesn't play and if Jairo Torres doesn't play, I don't love Chicago's attack. The Houston is at home. Steve is a pretty good goalkeeper as it is. I think I'll take Houston.
Interesting. I'm leaning towards. I'm trying to. There's a couple of games which I can see finishing 0-0 this weekend. I think there's Inter Miami, Minnesota, and I think Real Salt Lake Columbus, as we discussed earlier in the pod. knowing which one of those keepers to go for is the challenge. And I think I would.
Drake Callender has been one of the best goalkeepers in the league.
Yeah.
I will say
I'm
that.
leaning that way. I'm going to go with Callender and Inter Miami to keep a clean sheet. That would be
That's bold. Emmanuel Reynoso, Robin Ludd, Fragapane, keeping them all off the score sheet. Bold strategy,
was your comments. It was your comments about Adrian Heath that swung me. I was actually going to take Royal Salt Lake, but I think that's edged it out with that little insight on Mr. Heath.
Love it. So yeah, I think that will officially wrap things up for this first week. If you want to get in touch with us, we will have all of our information in the show notes. We'll also put the parlay of the week, or what do you call it? The accumulator of the week in the show notes. So if you guys couldn't follow that, we'll list everything out for you as far as what we selected. But that's going to be it for this week. Have a good rest of your week, John. Enjoy the weekend.
Yeah. Likewise, and please do let us know on Twitter or in Discord. What you thought of the podcast. If there's any questions you want to ask, if there's any suggestions for future episodes, we'd love to hear them. So, but thank you, Kris. It's been a great conversation. I hope everyone at home enjoyed it.
All right, you guys have a good rest of your week.